I am so happy to be here, and so grateful for you to be here. I'm so grateful for your country and for the animals of your country that this is happening. And thanks to all the people involved in organizing this, and to all of you for being here today to be better helpers for the animals. So, I'm not going to say more, I'm going to start crying. I've been introduced already. Just one more thing about myself is that me and my girlfriend also run a sanctuary. It's a bit of a safe haven for vegans. You're also welcome there. We have a place to stay, a small cabin in the woods that we welcome vegans to who want to have a pause from this very cruel world. This is what we're after, the vegan world. And you can see the strawberries in the air and the broccoli forest. This is the plant-based world that we want. And I'm going to talk about where we are today. I'm going to talk about the calls for action, which means what are we going to ask people to do, and the arguments that we're going to use to convince people to move forward. And then I'm going to talk about the environment in which this has to happen. But first, after Mickey's Good News Show, a bit of a reality check. We know that meat consumption, it's just going to be very short. Meat consumption is still growing. It's still expected to rise a lot because of increasing consumption, increasing population. The market share of meat substitutes are still quite small, and we have to deal also with a very, very small budget to fight that. This is Harvard House. And this is one building of Harvard University, and Harvard University spent $800 million last year to renovate it. Do you know how much money we have as the global movement for farmed animals compared to this $800 million? We have about 350 million, maybe. So less than Harvard University spending on the renovation of one building. That's what we have globally altogether. So that's not much, and still we're able to do with it so much. We dealing with lobbying with horrible people who do horrible things to help people keep eating animals. We are dealing with a lot of subsidies. We are dealing with people who don't want to know, so we are still a very small group as vegans, and as a result of which I think one of the reasons that most people eat meat is that actually most people eat meat, right? People do what other people are doing, and we look at each other to see what norms are normal, what is socially justified, etc. So how are we going to change that? And I want to talk about two mistakes very briefly that we make about strategies. And when we strategize and when we think about solutions, we can make two mistakes. The one is that there's only one right strategy. I think you know people like that in our movement who say it has to be like this is the only way. And the opposite is also a mistake. That is to say that all strategies are good. That is lazy thinking. Some strategies are indeed better than others, right? But we have to, in any case, be open-minded and critical at the same time. We have to be open-minded to the fact that many things, many different things can work, different things than what we are doing. And at the same time, we have to consider that some things are not working, maybe not very well. What is the thing that we've been doing? Most of the time, something like this: go vegan for the animals. That is our message. And if you look at that message in more detail, you can see that it has two dimensions. We want people to shift in behavior, and we want them to shift in attitude. And if you are like a standard vegan, then all of these in-between positions are not really ideal. Like if you are semi-vegetarian or meatless Monday person, and you're doing it for health reasons, it's all not very good. We don't even like people to be vegan for the wrong reasons, right? This is what we want over there. We want people to be vegan for the animals. And I understand that very much. I am vegan for the animals as well. This is the proof. But I call this an idealistic attitude, idealistic in the narrow sense. We're all idealists, but idealistic in the narrow sense means that we want to get where we want to right now, and we want people to do it for the right reasons, which is the reasons that we have. And I oppose that to pragmatism, and pragmatism is doing stuff according to what is happening in the world and we focus on what works, and we don't focus on rules and how it should be, or how our orthodoxy or vegan belief says that we should do it, right? And so maybe you know this famous quote by Jeremy Bentham: the question is not can they reason nor can they talk, but can they suffer? My variation on that is the question is not am I right or is this my truth, but does this work? Does this work? Does this work? Does this strategy, does this message work, is the most important thing we can ask. And another way to ask it is, what would she think about it? And what would she like us to do? And if we are infighting and if we're discussing about small little details, etc., then I guess this pig in her crate is face palming and is saying like, oh my God, what the fuck are you doing? Right? So always think of her viewpoint and what she would want us to do. That is a good rule of thumb, I think. So 3 ways to be pragmatic: the call to action, the arguments that we use, and the environment. What do we ask people to do? Well, we ask people to go vegan by default, right? And we can ask that in very nice ways. Go vegan, please, people, go vegan. Or we can say, like, go vegan, you cow-sucking perverts. But basically, it's the same message all the time in many different packages that we are using, right? And why are we using these messages or this message? Well, because we think that this is where we want to get people. Of course, why would we ask anything else? And also, we think that it's immoral to ask for less. There's people who say, like, yeah, asking for meatless Monday is immoral because then we are allowing other people to eat meat on the other days, which I don't think is a good comparison or a good argument. So we are very much measuring our success in terms of the amount of vegans that we have, and we try to increase the amount of vegans. But I think that the amount that we are reducing without becoming vegan is also a very important thing. And why is that? That's for different reasons. Well, first of all, people are more likely to do something if you don't ask for too much. The reducers may become vegans in a second stage. The reducers altogether for now reduce suffering more than the vegans because there's many more of them. And most importantly, many reducers may tip the system faster than a small and slowly growing number of vegans. Let me compare that with another phenomenon, gluten. Gluten is the new Al-Qaeda, as you can see here, since quite some time. There's 2 kinds of people who are gluten-free. There's the really gluten-free people. They have an allergy, and if they eat some gluten, they will die, literally, or they may die. And then there's the people who are gluten-free, but yeah, they don't have a medical condition. They think it's good for them. They are gluten reducers. They're a bit fakers or pretenders. And in restaurants, this is annoying. For the really gluten-free people, this is annoying because the waiter thinks that, like, oh yeah, we had some gluten-free person before and she ate some breadcrumbs and she didn't die, so you will be fine too, right? It's like they talked about vegans. And I found a woman commenting on Facebook some time ago, and she said, these pretenders, these reducers, make it really difficult for me as an allergic person to explain that for me it is a matter of life and death. But she said, on the other hand, they are creating much more choice. Do you understand that? So what happened here is that a bigger group of fakers, of reducers, created much more demand. And if you look at the gluten-free people, there's 1% that's allergic and 10% is gluten reducer, so many more. And it was because of these gluten reducers that it became interesting for producers to start making better and more products, right? And that is exactly the same that is happening in the vegan movement. We are a small number of vegans, a slightly bigger number of vegetarians, but a much bigger group of reducers. And the thing now is that reducers help make it easier for everybody to go vegan. If you're vegan today, you have your choice of so many different milk alternatives, right? All these different things. And if you look at the consumption of liquid, or the market share of liquid milk in the world, that is about 14%. 14% of all the liquid milk that is sold is plant-based. It's not all the vegans drinking all that milk. They have to be drinking milk full time to be responsible for that demand, right? So it is people who, for some degree, to some degree, for whatever reason, are consuming milk alternatives. They might be allergic, they might do it for taste or maybe the environment or whatever, but they are helping to increase demand and increase supply, and thus they are making it easier for everybody to shift more and more to the vegan spectrum, to the end of the vegan spectrum, because there's more and more options and it becomes easier, right? So this is an important message. Rather than seeing things in black and white, we should see it in gray or on a spectrum. And all these people who are not vegan, but who are reducers or maybe pescatarians or meatless Monday people, they are strategically a very important segment for us. They are facilitating the transition. They are not what we would ideally want them to do. They're not doing what we ideally would want them to do, but they are contributing to the progress. So what arguments do we use to reach them? If reducing is important, then we should look at the arguments that help people reduce. So again, my reason is, and I blurred it out so it's not too cruel, but my reason is animal suffering. I want that to stop. But in our movement, we can see clearly that there are moral arguments and non-moral arguments, or animal arguments and non-animal arguments, right? And some examples of these non-moral arguments are, of course, in the first place, health, but they can also be like reasons why people eat vegan or eat more vegan. Can be health, can be social reasons, like when your girlfriend is vegan, but you are not, and you do it for her. You haven't really like understood the whole animal rights stuff, but you do it for love, for somebody else, because it's trendy or whatever. You can do it for financial reasons. You can do it because you're in a vegan prison, which doesn't exist even in Israel. But basically, of course, if you look at all these reasons, we are, in our movement, emphasizing the moral reasons all the time. The moral arguments are what we are emphasizing. We have very much a moral focus. And why is that? Well, we very much trust still in that moral argument. We say things like, show earthlings to everybody and everybody will be vegan, right? And we have a distrust of people who are health vegans. We don't want them even to call themselves vegan. We say, like, you have to call yourselves plant-based and not vegan because vegan is an ethical thing, right? I don't think that's the best idea. I don't think we need to make a small group even smaller. But what's important here is that the arguments don't always matter as much as we think. And let me give you an example. This is not what you think it is. This is oil from the sperm whale. And this beautiful creature is still hunted in a couple of countries, but in most places is not anymore. This creature used to be hunted for their oil, and the oil was used as a fuel to light lamps, etc. But the problem was that this oil was not very lasting, it stank, it was expensive, etc. And all of a sudden, some guy, Alexander Gessner, he invented something else called kerosene, and that was a much more efficient oil or fuel that lasted longer, that wasn't as smelly, etc. And so what happened? People started to use this oil. They didn't need to use whale oil anymore, whale blubber anymore, and the whaling industry went down and down and down. And in 1986, we had an almost worldwide ban on whale hunting. And the question is, did that happen for moral reasons? And the question is, would that have happened if we had still been hunting whales? If we had been still using whale oil? I don't think so. It is because we were not dependent on that animal anymore that we could say, okay, let's stop it because it's a beautiful creature. But if we had still been using that animal and their oil, it would have been much more difficult to abolish it. So this whole process started out with an innovation. And in the end, for moral reasons, we abolished whale hunting, but it didn't start like that. So the thing is that sometimes we don't need to have the right motivations to do the right thing, right? And you might find that maybe not right, because if people stop eating meat for other reasons, then yeah, they're still not caring about animals, right? That's not ideal, and I agree. But here is the good news about that. So if we think about how change is created, there's different ways, but what we do generally in our movement and in our social justice movements, what we try to do is to change people's attitudes. And then we hope that from there, they will change their behavior. So I give you a flyer or a website about animal suffering. I hope you see, okay, animals are important, so I have to change my life, I have to change my diet, I will go vegan. That is what we hope. Does it happen like that? Sometimes it does, but often it does not. There's a huge attitude-behavior gap, right? So the thing is that it doesn't only go in this direction. It also goes in this direction. Your behavior can determine your attitude and your belief. So what you eat might determine how you look at animals, right? So right now, we have billions of people who are eating meat every day, animal products every day. They have very much a stake in what's going on. They are stakeholders like this, right? They have a vested interest in believing something. They want to believe that animals are not suffering, that they're not important, because they want to keep eating that. They are very much dependent. In English, we say, where you stand depends on where you sit. Your opinion depends on what you do, on your position, right? So we have to change that. Here is an example of how that may work. This is an advertisement from a meat substitute company, meat alternative company. It's about a guy. He's a very big, manly guy. He's in his truck. He's working, and he hears at some point a news flash on the radio about the impact that meat has on the environment. And what does he do? Don't know if you can see it, but he's going to change the channel. He doesn't want to hear that. Why would he want to hear something that says something bad about what he's doing? It will make him feel bad. He doesn't want to hear it, right? Then in his personal car on the way home, he sees or he hears the same thing on the radio. Again, this message, and again, he switches the channel. But then he comes home, and his wife, it's a bit of a traditional situation, his wife has made this meat alternative that the company that made this advertisement is selling. And he tastes it, and he says, this is pretty good. And then later, apparently he's emancipated enough to do the dishes, he sees this cookbook and that his wife has strategically placed there, and he sees the packaging, and he picks it up, and he's interested. He's interested because he had a good taste experience, and his defensiveness went down. You understand? So behavior came first here, and then the attitude change followed. And you can imagine that the next time he hears news on meat and the environment or meat and animals, he won't change the channel anymore because he had this good experience. So we always think about it like this: the more people care about animals, the more people will eat vegan, but it also works the other way around. Sorry, now this should slide down, but it doesn't work. The more people eat vegan, the more they will care about animals. So you start with behavior, and then attitude follows. And people who don't entirely get this and don't understand how people can be like that, then I invite you to think about where you are inconsistent or where you don't want to know something in your own life. Like, for instance, I can very clearly see how I'm resistant to reading this. Can you imagine? I don't want to know what's in here. I eat a lot of plants, right? I don't want to know that plants have pain. I hope it's not true, because I'm fucked if it's true, right? So I'm going to skip this. I haven't read it, not so far. Part 4 is the environment. So the title of this talk is Making Compassion Easier. Compassion at this moment costs too much. And what do I mean with that? If we want to be compassionate, if we see, okay, animals are important, I should care about animals, I'm doing wrong stuff, then we have to change a lot. The sacrifice is still, for a lot of people, big, or it seems big to them, right? So if this is true, that also behavior influences attitude, we have to make sure that the behavior change is as easy as possible. You can compare this to, we have to make sure that this is not the situation. So you have alternatives that are, even though you might think as a vegan that they're everywhere, they're not available enough, they're not low cost enough, they're not good enough, they're not spread enough, etc. And that's why the required effort is high. And you and I are able to put in this effort. I was already doing this effort 25 years ago when there was not much that I could eat as a vegan, right? But most people don't want to make this effort, and we have to just accept that. So we have to create this situation. Alternatives everywhere, cheap, tasty, whatever, so the required effort is much lower. It's like with flying. If I ask you to stop flying, maybe you have relatives in America. How are you going to do that if you stop flying? You're going to take the boat? If you take the boat, you have to be very, very motivated, very, very green, right? Most people are not like that, so we need other solutions. And these solutions are here, they're coming, they're getting better every day. There are organizations, there's companies who are working on these products, making them better and better. They're still not good enough, they're still not everywhere, but we are getting there. What we will also need, apart from these companies creating these alternatives, is help from the government. That has to make or create a level playing field, that has to be making it easier for these companies to produce these products. Regulation, subsidies, grants, etc., investments, all these things we need, and that is also very important work for you to do as a movement. And we also need all of you. We also need a very thriving animal rights movement, because you might sometimes think, what is my place with all these commercial companies creating these products, and what do I still have to do in there? Well, we have been focusing for a long time first on consumers, and then we started to focus on institutional change and on the producers. But now we have quite a good amount of vegan products. Again, still has to be improved, but we don't always have the people consuming them. Demand is not always there, and that is part of your task as well, to increase demand so that we have this virtuous cycle between supply and demand, right? I think this is a very important task that all of you have. So let's put everything together that I've told today. We started by saying that this is our strategy, mainly our message: love animals and go vegan. We want people to be vegan, behavior change, and we want them to believe that animals are not there for us to use, attitude change. So I showed you this. This is the only thing that we find ideal, but as choices increase, becoming stricter on that vegan spectrum becomes easier and easier. And as people eat vegan, for whatever reason, to whatever degree, the defense goes down, hearts and minds can open, and compassion can grow. Compassion becomes easier. So rather than seeing it like this, we should see it like this. This is my favorite part of the presentation when I do this. So we can encourage every step for every reason. And what's important here also is that I know there's a lot of fighting in our movement about people who say, no, reduction, that's not good enough, But what I hope to have shown with this strategy, and I explained it further in my book, is that this strategy leads to the same thing, leads to the vegan world, helps create the vegan world. And we have to believe, all of us, that those other activists in the movement, those other organizations that may have different strategies, that we all believe in the same thing. So trust and being charitable to one another, to other activists, to other people in the movement, is really very, very important. The belief that we can all work together. It's even more important today in this world that seems to be going to hell at some point. So this is the last thing. I see our movement as having two phases. and don't ask me how long they are or when the first phase will end. It's not a marathon, it's an ultra marathon. This is an evolution that's going to take a while. At least I'm optimistic. When people asked me when I started, do you believe in a vegan world, that it will ever come? I said yes, but I thought that it was science fiction for the 23rd century maybe. Today I do believe that it can come this century. It's a bit harder to believe this today than it was 5 years ago, but I still believe it can come this century. Maybe for some of you, this century still sounds very long, but again, it is a massive challenge. We are trying to convince 8 billion people to change their diet. That is going to take a while. That requires patience, that requires dedication. That's why I'm so happy that you're all here today to continue with that dedication and that passion. Thank you very much.